Up next on Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com, GT-LITES. Welcome to this episode of Inside the SCCA. I am Brian Bielanski, and this is, I think this is the part of the show where I try to guess what episode number it is. I believe it's episode 176, and today we have got a great show ahead for you. Talking about GT-LITE, one of those classes that I think has some of the coolest cars in all of the SCCA, and I've got some guys here with me who are going to help me talk about it today. It is also kind of an interesting class because it's a class that has already had a bit of consolidation into it, and that is a big topic right now in the club with some new ideas that are out there for moving forward in the world as we have it now. Our guests tonight, Ken Gassin, Dan Wold. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hey, doing great,
Brian. How are you?
We're doing really good. Not bad for a Wednesday evening here out on the West Coast. You guys are out on the East-ish coast, or at least the Midwest. So thank you for coming on a little bit late with us tonight. And but it's going to be a good show. We start every show the same way. Before we get into the meat of why we're here, I like to ask all of our guests the exact same question. If you've watched the show, you know what's coming. If not, here comes the question nonetheless. And Ken, since you're the top guy on the screen, you're going to get to go first. How did you get mixed up in this crazy sport that we love?
Man, I've watched this podcast before, and I still wasn't prepared for this question. I got involved with the SCCA in 2016. Basically, growing up, I always had a general interest on how things work, mechanically, electronically, RC cars, RC airplanes, and stuff like that. Even into like my, I guess, college summer job, I worked in a dog food factory and was really interested in all the machines there. And so it was until 2016, I guess, when I saw, you may know, one of my family members, Rusty Bell, announcer at Mid-Ohio.
I know
Rusty. He was preparing for the 2016 runoffs after an 8-year hiatus and posting things on Facebook. And basically, I asked him if he needed any help. And so for the next 2 years, I crewed on his team. They had the ultimate goal of racing the 2017 runoffs. It was a bucket list track for Rusty at Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
So I helped him through that. At the time, I was rebuilding a lot of transmissions for Honda Research and Development. So I went through his transmissions and did things like that. In 2018, he was gracious enough to let me borrow his car. I went to driver's school at Waterford Hills. And during that year, I bought my current car and built it and raced it. I've been racing it since 2019.
All right, great. Interesting, because most of our folks aren't folks that came to it late in life, so or later in life. Not that you're late in life. There is your host sticking his foot in his mouth already early in the show. Dan, same question to you. How did you get mixed up with this sport?
I was born into it.
Yeah.
Both sides of the family. My dad was a professional crew back in the 70s, Can-Am, Trans Am.
Oh, wow.
My uncles, both sides, cousins, both sides. Both vintage, which I grew up mostly in vintage racing, and then also people doing SCCA and ice racing in Minnesota, rally, basically anything involving a car.
Yep.
Doing lefts and rights, we've been into.
Right.
As far as the SCCA, I was fairly late into that. I bought a GT-LITE car must have been 2016. Spent a couple years attempting to get that up to speed. Eventually ended up buying or doing a foster situation that turned into a buying situation through Peter Zeckert and friends, and have kind of been hooked ever since into the GT-LITE thing and SCCA as well. Yeah, it's been kind of off to the races as it were ever since.
Yeah. Ken, you were in Rusty's car at Mid-Ohio this year, weren't you?
This year, I was in my car. Mike Helm was in Rusty's car this year.
That's right.
Yes.
I know that because Rusty was sitting next to me in the booth for the Mid-Ohio races, and he was not in his car, but he was very interested in this race to see how everyone was doing. So,
yes.
So tell us a little bit about GT-LITE. It is, for those who are new to the SCCA and aren't old like I am, most of the cars in GT-LITE were at one point in time either in GT4 or GT5, correct?
Correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
So how did the two classes come together? What was I'm guessing it was low car counts in both classes made sense to combine the two and figure out how to make them work together, right?
Yes, I'm not an expert in ancient history, and this is way before our time. What I believe is 2005 when the consolidation was.
Right.
I think 2008.
What was that, Ken?
2008, I believe.
2008 was the first year for the consolidation, and it's been kind of a difficult road for the class. It sounds like ever since. But I think the cars are still really interesting, and the consolidation, especially with what Ken and I are doing with our engine programs, is really taking advantage of some of the opportunities that GT-LITE,
right,
the consolidation rules have created. But it's been a real challenge to bring two very disparate classes together and make them work together.
Right. And what do you both drive?
What was the question?
Dan.
Which cars do you both drive? Dan, what are you driving?
Oh, yeah. I have a 200SX.
Okay.
The Nissan 200SX, the chassis, and it's funny that the manufacturer is significant in GT-LITE, but the bodies that it's attached to is one thing.
Right.
But we talk a lot in GT-LITE about chassis. So I have a Preston chassis that was built originally in 1986 for GT4.
Okay.
It's won 3 national championships along the way. It was eventually converted into a GT-LITE car by Bill Pinterick.
Okay.
Back when the consolidation happened. It was originally, people call it the Grant car. And Bill took it over, and then I bought it from Eric Madsen last fall. So it's a new car to me, but the car is almost 40 years old.
Right.
It's been, improved over the years. It's been front clipped a number of times. And I believe it to still be a future competitive car in the class, wherever that might go.
Sure. Was that a Pete Peterson car at one point? The national championship winners in that?
No, it was the Grants.
Okay.
Richard Grant, and I forget the other fella.
Sure.
Both
Okay.
Grants. Yeah.
And Ken, what are you driving?
So I drive a Toyota Tercel. It's a tube frame that was built in 1993 by a guy named Dave Schluter. It was the second car he built. It was first on track in 1994. And that year, Dave won a national championship in it.
Right.
So it's been through a couple different owners since then. I found it in a barn. It had been sitting in a barn, I think, since 2009. And it was just basically a chassis, and I pieced together the engine package that I kind of wanted to try to develop over the next few years, and we went racing from then on. I wanted to add some points to the GT4 GT5 combination.
Sure.
With trying to make the cars competitive with one another, they obviously had to slow down GT4 a little bit. The GT5s are already pretty high-strung cars, so there wasn't any way to make them quicker. They were already as light as they could be, and
Right.
As high strung as they could be. So the way they did that was to add a restrictor to the bigger cars.
Right.
And that was kind of a contentious topic at the time, and a lot of people just left the class because of that. So since then, I'm also a member of the GT advisory committee.
Right.
So since I've been doing it for about 6 months now, but in that time, we've really made great strides to try to we allowed chokes instead of SIRs for people that thought that the SIR wasn't a good solution. So yeah.
Yeah, it's always hard when you're taking the slowest class in a group and having it have to mix together with any other class, because the slowest class is probably already as maxed out as it's going to be, so there's almost nothing you probably can do to that. So the only option is to slow down the faster class, and that's kind of how things are classed in the SCCA. The fastest cars are, let's say, GT1s, and the slowest cars are GT5s, and it was the same with showroom stock and with IT, ABC. That's how it works. So when you're in a GT5 car, like you said, the struggle becomes with the cars in the faster class, because they bought a car not wanting to go slower, they bought a car wanting to go faster.
Right.
Exactly. Yep.
So that could probably ruffle some feathers.
For sure.
It has, and we've kind of seen people who have embraced the restrictor, and we're very late to the show here, but Ken and I think we're in agreement that we both like the restrictor and what it allows us to do, and for the economies that it buys you, it's not terrible.
Right.
If you learn to love the stupid thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it more popular, or do you think it would be more popular if you tried to find people who weren't involved with the GT4, GT5 cars, who don't know any better, who just think of the class as the GT-LITE class, and they're like, okay, I'm getting into this class?
That's one thing I often say, sometimes out loud, but a lot of times to myself, like people who were part of the FSAE in college, that was, the name of the game was to maximize the efficiency of an engine that ran through a restrictor. So if we could, attract people like that, I think that it would be a lot easier sell than someone who was disenfranchised GT4 car.
Right.
And kind of the wrinkle, unfortunately, has been a lot of the motors that were excellent GT4 motors don't react well to a restrictor.
Right.
And that's been, I think, one of the big challenges is to keep those people who have invested tons and tons and tons of time and money and blood, sweat, and tears of development over a long time. Highly over square motor, short stroke motor, this does not do particularly well. You just can't rev with that restrictor on the front of the motor. So there's certain motors that just don't work well with the restrictor, and the people that were pot committed to those programs, it's very, very, very difficult.
Right. So is the best system then, if not from a money standpoint or a time standpoint, but if you're going to run a GT4 car with a restrictor, is really the most competitive way to start with a whole new motor with a different concept, understanding that the restrictor has got to be part of it?
I believe that's been Ken and I's argument since the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for the people that have a lot, like I said, a lot invested in their programs, but with what we've been developing, me on the Nissan side and Ken on the Toyota side, very economical and very competitive.
Because
it's a restrictor's a great thing, but you just gotta the motors just look a whole lot different than a full prep crazy race motor.
So Dan, is that a GT-LITE car behind you?
It is a GT-LITE car behind me. That's the one I've been campaigning this year.
All right, so I'm bringing your camera up full here, just so we get a better shot of the car. So what I'm seeing behind you is why I think this is one of the coolest classes. I mean, it is a full-on tube frame car. I suspect they don't all have to be. There might be some older ones that were unibodies, right? Or they're not all tube frame cars.
No,
right?
their tub cars are a thing. There are a number of them, and my contention has been that they have the potential to be competitive in the class.
Yeah.
If they were so developed.
Yeah. But these are full-on race cars. You know, they run on slick tires. They run on their own suspension geometry. You can futz around with the motors. You can futz around with the transmissions. These are real race cars, and you know, so much of what we do in the club, and I love it. I'm a Honda guy, and I love B-Spec, and I came up through IT and all of that, building Civics and CRXs. But so much of the club is adapting a production car to go racing, and that's fun, and people love doing it. But for people who really like to play with cars and like to wrench, this is an awesome class, right?
I would contend that it's the best.
Yeah. And it's probably the most economical, right? Of a sport that's not really economical. We'll get that out of the way.
Right. Yeah. I was just gonna say the same thing. It's very economical for someone who likes to, you know, man, I don't know, like everything from just either machining your own parts or adapting parts to fit these things. It's just, they mini stock rear ends, and they're amazing. And you get they run on 9.5-inch slicks, which aren't huge, but they're 2,000 pounds. You get really high G's. We corner arguably the fastest out of any car, any sports car.
Sure.
Not like a winged car, but any sports car on the track. So,
and with the restrictor, if you're running the GT4 car in GT-LITE, does the restrictor basically make the maintenance and the longevity on the motor a lot longer, because you're never really going to take it to its full extent? And I mean, you got to really work hard to blow up a restricted GT-LITE motor, right?
Well,
I mean, you can money shift it.
Yeah.
Well, we got to remember they're very high compression motors.
Sure.
So we break them in new and exciting ways.
Different ways.
We're not necessarily spinning the bottom ends out of them.
Right.
But keeping the top end going is what I found to be the challenge. Ken has had some excellent luck and not gone through a single motor since he started.
Yeah, I built the engine that I'm running now in 2021 for the Runoffs. And since then I've done compression checks and changed spark plugs. That's all I've done to it. So it's been pretty awesome. Transmission's a different story.
Yeah.
What's that, Dan?
And win majors while you're doing it.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. So there's been other classes that have had subscription issues. There are currently classes with subscription issues. The club has come out with this new idea of consolidating and getting the runoffs down to a more manageable number of races, with the idea, I think, of maximizing some track time possibly, or shortening the runoffs to make it less expensive to go to. Lots of theories on the motivation behind it. But let's face it, if you go to the runoffs and you've got a class with 6 or 7 cars, it's not a great show. It's probably not a lot of fun for the people there. You've gone through a consolidation in this class. Other classes are probably heading in that direction. What is the challenges that you guys are facing that you would like to help, or at least share your experiences for what may be coming for some other folks?
Ken?
Well, we're also kind of in that range of possibly being one of the lower classes in the totem pole. I'll say for GT-LITE, I feel like we always put on a really good show at the runoffs. We usually have between 15 and 20 cars show up and run. For the people who are this path may be consolidation, I would say just get out there and run and have fun and don't worry about it. It's gonna, the classes are gonna do what they're gonna do. I try to stay positive and motivate not only myself but other people to get out and just have fun with cars.
A lot of people always point to the resurgence of B-Spec over the last few years. Frank Schwartz and a couple of other folks. I shouldn't name Frank because I think there's 3 other folks with him whose names I never put together because they've all been on the show to talk about it. But there's a group of drivers who really put an effort in. I'm going to guess maybe 4 years ago, before Indy, the first Indy runoffs, to get the B-Spec cars out there to really advocate and grow for the class. Do you think, and have you looked at the model that they used, and are you trying to do something similar to dust off some of these old GT4, GT5 cars and get them back out there?
What's funny is, and I think if you talk to Frank, he'd agree with you that he took Peter Zeckert's model of keeping this class going.
Sure.
For B-Spec. So Peter's done this before. Peter was wonderful for the class, and he took a much deserved retirement from trying to keep the class alive.
Right.
And I think Ken and me and Mike and a bunch of other folks have tried to do the same work as one guy with varying degrees of success, but this is a tougher sell than B-Spec. This is a more difficult class to run than B-Spec.
Right.
In a lot of ways. And it's not as, I think we do ourselves a disservice a lot of times in joking about how difficult it is, but at the same time, it's not as easy as running a B-Spec car.
Sure.
Period. They're, like you said, they're full-on race cars. There's a lot of stuff that if you don't know what you're doing can go wrong for you. And we have quick change rear ends, racing transmissions, all that stuff that a B-Spec car doesn't have.
Right.
B-Spec car is super easy maintenance wise, and
sure.
We have friends who run I ran B-Spec last year.
Right.
And we have friends who run B-Spec, and they might change the oil on the trailer before the race weekend, and they're done. That's
right.
The extent of preparation.
Yeah.
But
I'll add to that. I have always offered my car up for anyone to use who's needed a car, whether it be for the race weekend or for the season or whatever. I've had a few takers. I helped Mike Helm qualify for the 2021 runoffs by letting him take my car to, was it just one race? Was it St. Louis? I can't recall. But everyone in the class is more than willing to help one another. Rentals, I mean, I've been a little bit busy in my home life, but that's one thing that I want to do. I have another GT-LITE car sitting in my garage, so hopefully eventually that will be a rental and we'll get more people out there. So
what do you guys have a bead on other cars that are out there that are dormant, that if say I call you guys up and say, what, I want to be part of this class, can you help me? Can you help me find a car that's out there, starting from scratch on these? I don't know that there's anybody really building brand new ones, right? Really the best option is to find one that's existing and work it from there, right?
You can have, there's a couple car builders out there that are building new chassis. The fact that there's over 100 out there, though, you'd be better off finding one that's already built, already been campaigned, and just updating it and putting a little work into it. but yeah, we do have a running list. Peter has a Rolodex in his head of everyone, and I've been trying over the past couple of years to get those people and cars in in a database somewhere, so so they don't have to live there. But yeah, there's also the GT-LITE classified, or this is just GT Classified's Facebook page, where any cars that are for sale, most of the cars that are for sale will be listed there.
Right. Right.
And our big
Just
challenge
reach out on Facebook.
Yeah, our challenge is, and you know, Ken's got his call list, I got my call list of, okay, what you know, call people, okay, what's going on with you? What do you need? What do you need to get the car out? What are you missing? What pieces are you missing?
Right.
What do we need to work on to get you out there? And so Ken's got a list of people. I got a list of people. He kind of works the Toyota side. I work the Nissan side, and there's plenty of good cars out there that need drivers, and people are motivated to run those cars and do their 3 majors, 4 majors, whatever, qualify for the runoffs and go to the runoffs. The raw materials out there. I think what we are lacking is people that want to run the cars.
Right. Right. See, we've talked Nissan, we've talked Toyota. The cool part, I went through the GCR last night before I went to bed and just kind of scrolled through the spec lines. There's a lot of different possibilities out there, you know. I mean, right. I wouldn't have a huge interest in either a Toyota or a Nissan. But if you had a Honda that I could get into, that would be something I'd be interested in. But the list is long, right?
I tell you what, this happened so many times, you know, paging through the spec lines, and you know, looking at an engine, and you know, there's some of the baseline specs in the spec lines, and looking at some of the available bodies, like, man, that'd be a really cool car to do that, that engine and that body. That would be a really, really, really neat idea. And you know, I bounced it off a Cat. Well, I think our latest one, we want to do a Lotus Europa.
Oh,
what motor do we pick out for that one, Ken?
I think it was a 1ZZ.
Yeah, we could do the 1ZZ Toyota.
Yeah,
we could Lotus Toyota, right? They're kind of the same thing a little bit. So,
but yeah, there's
for it, but there's all these crazy combinations that you could come up with, and you know, we can put any engine manufacturer wise in any car, and coming up with the lunatic combinations is great.
Yeah,
my car is stupid. It's got a base model Sentra motor in it from between 2003 and 2009. It's got the worst motor that Nissan made for that model year, and does all right.
That's awesome.
It just works really good with a restrictor in front of it.
Yeah.
To your point, Brian, the Hondas have been pretty competitive in GT-LITE over the last, I don't know, probably forever, but yeah, especially this year, there will be a really good Honda showing at Road America, with Peter Shadowin and
right.
Dentici will, I think, hopefully be running. And
well, I mean, as a guy who my dad spent a lot of money with Jim Dentici putting Hondas together, and if you go to Road America and don't have a Jim Dentici car out there, it's kind of a crying shame, you know. He was such a part of, or is such a part of the fabric of that part of the country with Hondas. So
yes,
and I think there is an original tube frame out there. I don't think it's in GT-LITE. I think it's racing in GT3 or GT2. But one of his original Honda CRXs are out there. And but yeah, he
has 2 in GT-LITE right now with I mean, him himself, he bought one of his originals back from Graham Fuller last year.
Okay.
And then why is his name slipping my mind? Who's the
Bovis?
Bovis.
Oh yeah,
Christopher Bovis.
Yeah,
has a Dentici car.
So
it's gonna be a Honda Fest this year at the runoffs for.
That's super cool. But I mean, even I do another podcast with a guy who's a huge Opel GT fan. There's an Opel GT on the spec line. I don't think anybody wants to go out and race it, but if you wanted to, you can go find a way to do it.
There was a Saab Sonnet that was very successful.
Yep.
GT4 back in the day. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy ways you can do it.
All right, so I want each one of you to give the best sales pitch. What's it like to drive these cars? Tell us what it's like on the racetrack, because that's, I think, the big selling point on these things.
Unlimited brakes, unlimited tire. In my case, a sequential transmission. It's awesome. Just razor sharp handling. I feel like the car is so much better than me. I felt in a lot of the other stuff I've driven over the years. It's like, just this car kind of sucks. I'm like, no, this car is better than me, and it's able to do crazy stuff.
Yeah,
crazy amount of G, crazy brakes, but just doesn't accelerate very fast.
Right. When it does get up there, what are the top end speeds you're looking at? Let's say at a place like Road America, you got a lot of places to stretch your legs.
Well,
I mean, Peter does what, 130 at Road America? I think our cars are a little slower than that.
Okay.
Not too much, but like Mid Ohio, I'm just under 120.
Sure.
2018.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, what's fun for you driving these things?
Oh, it's well, I mean, besides being out there with my friends, just the braking so hard that you get bruises on your shoulders, the cornering, the late brake and cornering, passing. We race mainly with production cars on the track, which just they don't have the braking and the cornering capability that we do, and being able to get past them through a corner is pretty exhilarating. Just trying to keep your we're not like super athletes, but so 2Gs feels pretty strong to the head, so trying to keep your head up at 2Gs through turn 1 at Mid Ohio, letting it rest on the headrest a little bit as you're cruising through there. It's pretty awesome. I mean, they're miniature GT1 cars. They're crazy.
Yeah. Give me 1 second here. I got to thank some folks. Now we're going to come back. Got a couple more questions before we wrap this thing up. Want to take an opportunity to thank the people that helped me put the podcast on. You can see their logos up in the corner here. Of course, first off, I want to thank RaceSchool.com. They are our new presenting sponsors of Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. Really great folks out here on the West Coast. They've got an SCCA accredited school, so you can come out here and you can get your school out of the way and walk out of their school, if you pass it, of course, with your SCCA license to get going and go racing right away. People from all over the country come out here to do their schools out at Buttonwillow and Willow Springs. So check them out, RaceSchool.com. Also, want to give a big thank you to Racekeeper. They are the official in-car camera of the Inside the SCCA podcast. We use their little camera when we go autocrossing. And when I get to go wheel-to-wheel racing again, I'll have a Racekeeper camera in the car for that as well. You can check them out. Of course, we also have Solo Performance Services. They are out at all or most of the Solo National Tour races, and of course, they will be with us at the Solo Nationals here coming up. My gosh, 3 weeks from now, I will be finishing up my final runs at Solo Nationals, attempting to not finish last in 8th Street one more time. So, but I will be out there with Dave and his crew. They'll be out there helping all of us out with all the stuff that they do. You can check them out, and their website, of course, is in the show notes. And if you're not going to any of those events, you can still buy stuff from them. Just go to the website. Good people. You can also pick up the phone and talk to them. Really, really helpful. And then finally, Ray Esports is the official Sim Racing League of Inside the SCCA. They do some great racing leagues on Tuesday nights and also on Saturday and Sundays with their Weekend Warriors leagues. Best part about Ray's leagues is most of the people racing are real life racers, on the track racers, and they they treat sim racing like they're on the racetrack. So they kind of act like there's consequences if you hit someone or if you hit a wall. So a little more respectful, a little more of an experience like you would expect at the racetrack. So all of those folks are on the show notes. So step down there, scroll down, click on all of those and tell them I sent you. All right, back to the guys here as we got a couple more questions that I want to throw at you here before we get ready to get out of here here on another Wednesday evening here on Inside the SCCA presented by raceschool.com. All right, so what is real quick before I get to the question, Brian Straczynski questioned me. He's in the chat when I mentioned the changes that SC is talking about, and I said less expensive with less eligible classes, and he gave me a big question about like how is that possible, and I understand the idea that the entry fee may go up a little bit because of this. My thought process though is if you're going to spend less days at the runoffs, less hotels, less days with your crew, there is where the cost savings could come in. And for some people, maybe for others it won't, but nothing's inexpensive, by the way, folks, and I understand that. Also, Big Walnut Wrestling says, excellent job, guys. You've done a great job. I don't know if you guys know who Big Walnut Racing is, or Big Walnut Wrestling, but...
Sounds like Jack Reel.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, it says, you guys have done a great job bringing people in with parts help and advice. So got some folks watching. If you're watching at home, please subscribe, hit the like button. That helps us a bunch. Yeah, so well, Brian makes another point. With less classes, the Super Tour prices will probably go up too. That's all possible. We'll have to see how it all plays out. And I don't know if I like the situation and like the changes myself. I'm still up for more thoughts from where the club goes. They really the plan hasn't been finalized enough really to make real opinions, right, guys?
We'll see.
No, there's in fact, there's a webcast. If you're a member of the SCCA, get on the SCCA.com website. Sign up to view the webinar tomorrow. I'm sure we'll all learn a little bit something.
Yeah. I know they've been listening to this show. They've been watching social media and taking in comments, and I'm sure that Eric's phone's been ringing off the hook and his email's been going nuts, and I'm hopeful that they can come up with a solution that kind of benefits as many people as possible. My problem is I have said for a long time, I think right back to episode 1 of this podcast, that I just feel we have too many classes in the SCCA. And we've been a club for a long time that's tried to kind of be a little bit of everything to everybody. And I think there's some classes and some cars that probably would be better served to go vintage racing. And maybe even creating a vintage class in our regional program would bolster the regional program a little bit. There's an idea I throw out there all the time. But if we're going down this road of the idea that we're going to be doing some consolidation, any thoughts on how you've been through it? How best can this happen?
Well, I mean, how best for us would be to continue as we're doing now.
Right.
And I would hope that was going to be what happens, but I think the chance of that not happening is extremely high.
Right.
The next best option would be some kind of rational merger with probably F Production, which seems to make the most sense to us and other people we've talked to. And, I would expect that we'd probably get the worst of that transaction, and rightfully so, because they've been more successful at numbers over the years. So we'd have to, they're typically faster than us on the fast tracks, and we're faster than them on the slow tracks. There have to be some kind of concessions to make that work. I think that'd be the next best outcome for us, and the worst outcome is we just go away.
Right.
And in which case, I spent all winter and just a stupid amount of money getting this car ready, and I'm going to stick with the car. Unfortunately, I'll run the car somewhere, and it probably is not going to be with the club. Unfortunately,
right.
There's other venues where I think the car can fit in, and we'd have to make the adjustments to make that happen. So I don't know. I don't know where Ken is with this, and moving the formula is going to be costly for all of us.
Right.
In the class, so it's going to be another tough value proposition to stay with the club for some people, and to stay racing for some people. It might be the last straw, or it might be a consolidation with F-Prod that goes really well. It's very difficult to know until we know more.
Does H-Prod work?
I believe that if the only way I could see that working is you take the old GT5 spec lines and consolidate those somehow into H-Prod, and you do the same with GT4, the old GT4 spec lines, and integrate that into to F-Prod.
Yeah,
that's the only way I could see that working, and I think that'd be difficult.
Yeah, because I was thinking E and F-Prod would go together. I hadn't thought about GT-LITES coming and being part of that party.
Yeah, I think it makes sense because we race with those guys weekend after weekend, and the fast GT-LITE cars are intermixed with the fast F-Prod cars, and the slow ones are mixed with the slow ones. So if you look, the crazy thing is if you look at the lap times over all the classes over the whole weekend, there's cars that consistently are in the same lap time bands.
Right.
And those would be your obvious opportunities for consolidation. And that we run on the same tires that F-Prod runs on is a huge argument in favor of that as well. But I mean, obviously, I think we'd like to continue on now as we're doing now. People have a lot of time, money, development time into making this formula work, and it's good. I imagine it'd have to change if we consolidate.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Ken?
Yeah, and I'd like to counter your point about some of the cars going. I mean, some of the classes going historical. I think maybe some of the cars that might fit better in historical classes or vintage racing. But to me, that just points to a failure of either club members or club management to, I guess, create rules that allow people to want to bring new cars to the class.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate that. And
there's some real challenges with bringing. I think people are after the prod cars. People are somewhat after the GT-LITE and GT3 cars. Most of the vintage groups are based on a 70s rule set, and this is based on a 2024 rule set.
Sure.
And granted, the car is almost 40 years old, but what's left from 1986?
Right.
Basically nothing. It's a current what I think is a competitive car.
Right.
So is it vintage? Well, it's got a 1995 body on it, but it'd be just as easy to throw a 25 body on it.
Sure. If the end result was the core of, I don't know, 12 or 14 classes that they come up with that are highly subscribed and really there's no doubt that they would go forward as runoffs classes, and then a rotation of all the other classes so that maybe you would go to the runoffs every other year or something like that. Is that something, do you think, that would keep people still interested if they didn't have that opportunity every year?
Ken?
I mean, I'm relatively new to racing into SCCA, but to some people, it's their whole lives. It's
right.
It's they're born and bred. Their parents have done it, and their grandparents, and to not have the opportunity to race on the grand stage every year, I don't think would be a very saleable option. And I don't think so.
Sure.
If you're not going to go Ken Ken and Mike Helm is another GT-LITE nutso, and me, we own a ITA Dodge Neon, and it's infinitely more economical to run that
Sure.
car. It's not slow. It's a hell of a ride to drive.
Yeah.
If, and you can't bring it to the runoffs, but who cares? Because you're having a hell of a good time at your regional. I mean, why why wouldn't we do that instead of running these cars if we can't do the runoffs or
Right.
the super tours? It's a very difficult sell
Sure.
to race a car that takes as much time and money and energy as these cars if you're not going to get to play on the big stage.
Right. All right, so you've told us how much fun this is. Let's go out on a big old positive note. If people are watching this and say, "Heck, I'd like to give this a shot," what is the best way for them to get a hold of you? How do we get people to get in touch with you guys? Because it seems like whether you personally can help them out, cars that are out there, you could probably start getting people pointed in the right direction. How do we make this happen?
Talk to Ken.
For sure. Yeah, just reach out on Facebook.
Okay.
I will do anything in my power to get someone in a GT-LITE car. I will drive halfway across the country and pick it up with my trailer. Whatever you need to get started in this class. It's a great class. It's great people.
I think we've been remiss in not talking. We've talked about the cars and our current situation, but the people in this class are the absolute best people in the club, and I will die on that. I mean, they are some of the coolest people you'll ever want to meet in this.
The first time I met Dan in person, I drove to his house to pick up a car he gave me because it had a 1ZZ engine. So for the first year, I ran an engine that he gave me out of one of his cars.
Right.
So,
right.
I've had my car initially was built with parts off people's cars for the first year, shops and fuel tank or fuel cells, and everything on my car was fire systems was given to me or a reasonable price to get my car on the track. And to repay that would be nothing.
Sure.
It's funny if you look at I know social media is probably not the best metric, but I'm a member of a lot of other classes, Facebook pages, and very well subscribed classes, more significantly more than us. Our Facebook group is probably the busiest of any class that I've seen, and it's just a whole lot of people helping each other out. Hey, what do you do about this? Or hey, I've never seen this before. Or,
yeah.
Oh, I need help with that or the other thing, and it's just that the generosity is amazing.
When I moved out here to the West Coast, growing up and racing on the East Coast for 20 plus years, I was shocked when I came out here to understand it, and it's even regionally by even northern and southern Pacific. There are no IT cars out here, almost none. But you go up north, up to San Francisco region, and there's some up there and everything. Is GT-LITE, are there pockets where it's a lot more popular than others?
Yes.
Where are it's in Midwest?
Okay.
It's Midwest. There's a Pacific Northwest contingent.
Okay.
Having the runoffs not go to the West Coast anymore has had a significant negative impact on the class with our West Coast contingent. And that's been a tough thing for us to deal with because there was a big West Coast contingent at one time.
Yeah.
But the upper Midwest is kind of our bread and butter.
That's interesting that you say that because it must have been 40 years the runoffs never came to the West Coast. And how did that there was only 2 races out here, I believe, just the Sonoma, and 1 race at Sonoma, 1 race at Laguna. I'm interested in how that affected the West Coast contingent that it didn't come back, because for so many years that it never came out here at all.
Yeah, that's a better question for our friends out on the West Coast.
Yeah, interesting.
They'd be better able to answer that. But even Heartland Park, which they're at for a number of years.
Sure.
That's a whole different kettle of fish than going out to the VIR.
Right. Right.
You're talking probably another 16 or 18 hours of driving to go from
right
out to VIR and all that. So
yeah.
But like I said, that's a more appropriate question for those folks.
Sure.
But
sure.
I think the West Coast racing was awesome for our class. Cars out that neck of the woods.
Yeah, I mean, 2021 champion Scott Toomey drove out from Washington, Seattle. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I was surprised that the West Coast editions didn't have more East Coast cars that came over the mountain, because they weren't at. I mean, they were at iconic racetracks. You know, it wasn't like they came and I spend 10 weekends a year at Buttonwillow, and it is as close to my heart as any racetrack I've ever been involved with. And I grew up in Wisconsin with Road America and Blackhawk Farms and some amazing racetracks in my lineage. But the Runoffs wasn't at Buttonwillow. It was at Laguna Seca and Sonoma, and I was really surprised that there weren't bigger car counts there.
It's unfortunate because it kind of set the deck, for what we're seeing now, and I think another thing that hurts us for the runoff participation is, and I don't know if Ken agrees with me on this, is the tendency to go to the quote unquote big car tracks.
Sure.
Really, it's it's difficult for small bore cars because the engine development is that much more important.
Right.
Where you can get away with a somewhat substandard engine package at somewhere like Mid Ohio, at Elkhart Lake. You need to bring the power. I don't care how well your car handles. You got to bring some power.
Right. All right, this is the time when I give you guys a chance to thank whoever all is out there who sponsors the car, or the people who wrench on the car with you guys. I like to give everybody an opportunity to get those thank yous in, and because none of us, very, very few of us, do this by ourselves. Whether it's with some financial help from a sponsor, or whether it's the wife and the family. So here's your shot. Take it away, guys.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Oh, geez.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh boy. Yeah. So number one, my wife is incredibly supportive, and that's the number one thing. And Ken and Mike Helm and I have a long-standing Facebook Messenger text chain that's been going on for a million years, and it's every day and bouncing dumb ideas off each other for years and years and years on end. Has been a real cool deal. Also, the GT-LITE Facebook page, all the members in the community, the GT-LITE and small bore community in general, huge. But I'm famously unsponsored by anybody or anything, and do 99.9% of the work on the car myself. So. Yeah. Ken is pretty much the only guy who ever touches my car, and that's pretty rare.
Yeah. All right, Ken, your turn.
Yeah. In addition to everyone that Dan thanked, my wife as well has been a huge supporter and always at the track with me, and her parents are their crew for me to eat very well at the racetrack.
Ken tries to quit racing every year, so that's great for Ken's wife. Drags him back into the fold after he talks about Cliff every year.
And then this year at Mid Ohio, you probably saw I had in-car camera. So yeah, I wanted to thank Jake Finnegan for setting me up with that camera at Candelaria. That was pretty cool. I wish the race would have gone better for me. I was kind of stuck behind an EP car, and wasn't able to make it up back to the front of the pack. So the footage wasn't great, but it was a great thing for Jake to do, and for me, like, this is a passion project. So to recognize that and help me out and spread the GT-LITE word out there was awesome for him to do. Yeah, I can't think of anyone else, so I'm not sponsored really by anyone either. So I do with the help of Dan doing my machine work, and we all get together and work on our cars ourselves. So
All right. Dan Wold, Ken Gassin, thanks guys. I appreciate it. It was a good conversation. I love these cars, and I love calling those races on the Super Tour. Always a good time, and I always like sticking my head in them when I'm at the track to see the cool stuff on the inside when I can see it. So really appreciate you taking a few minutes with me tonight.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot for the opportunity to spread the good word for GT-LITE.
Spread the GT-LITE love. There we go. All right, guys.
Yep.
That's going to do it for another episode of Inside the SCCA. If you like what you saw, subscribe to the RacingWire Podcast Network and the Racing Network on YouTube. New episodes on YouTube every Wednesday night, and then we have the podcast drops on Friday mornings on the podcast channel. If you like what you hear, subscribe and do all that fun stuff. Send us a note. If you can check us out on social media, it's RacingWire Info on Twitter. Again, new episodes every week. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a great weekend. Go have fun with cars, and of course, stay safe out there. Inside the SCCA is a presentation of the RacingWire Podcast Network and Rural 15 Productions. This podcast is not affiliated with, endorsed, or sponsored by the Sports Car Club of America. The views expressed within are those of the host and our guests, and not that of the SCCA. All right, my mouse has died, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get us off the air. Let me try here.
Just have to keep on going or stuck in the podcast purgatory, huh?
That's crazy. I think I need a new mouse. But guys, thank you. I appreciate it. And good luck with stuff. And if you ever want to pop, I'm close. It's almost going to let me end it. Oh gosh.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been so cool to be involved with this class and the people. It's neat being able to share it.
Yeah. All right, guys, be well.
Sweet.
Thanks
Thanks,
you too.
Brian.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Cool.
See you.
Bye.